Hi, everybody. I'm Olivia F. Scott, the Associate Professor of Advertising at Loyola University, New Orleans, the founder of Emerge Alliance's marketing consultancy, and best of all, the host of Behind the Ad, where we peel the layers of the media, advertising, and marketing onion back to demystify the industry for you. In today's world, many beautiful creative people profess to being creative directors. I'm a creative director. They create content for many different platforms, but in the world of advertising, being a creative director is a very specific and esteemed role in which creative people strategically develop ideas and develop art and copy for effective advertising. Today, we have joining with us an illustrious and industrious creative director from LCMC Health to learn more about what a creative director does, his journey to becoming a creative director, and to hear more about some of his prize campaigns. Let's welcome, if you will, to Behind the Ad, the one and only Jason Otis. How are you, Jason?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, Olivia.
Of course. So, Jason, you're a creative director. Can you just kind of go into, and you're a very busy creative director, so thank you for making the time. But can you just tell us, what has your journey to becoming a creative director been? And I'll tell you before you answer why I'm starting with that question. I recently, as a consultant with Emerge, I was invited to do like a job search. I think I mentioned this to you, for a creative director. And so I was managing it on Indeed.com. And I, of course, thought a creative director from my experience at Ogilvy and DDB and all the different agencies. I understand what a creative director is from my perspective, right? It's someone who creates ads, they do the copy and the art. But I got an overwhelming number of beautiful young people, right? Different generation, I'm late 40s, that they're saying, I create social media ads. I create content for Pinterest. So I'm a creative director. So I would like for you to share, traditionally, a traditional creative director in the advertising world, what has been your path to become one? And then tell us more about what you do as a creative director.
Okay, I'd be happy to. My path to becoming a creative director, and I will say there's even a distinction within my path because I think what you were talking about was a creative director in an advertising agency world. Mm-hmm. And I've been that, but right now I'm a creative director on a brand side. So it's a different role, and we can talk about that.
Okay.
But my path to becoming creative director might be different than the path that somebody would take today. But I'll just talk about my path because it's the only story that I know.
That's why we're here.
Yeah. So it started really as a youngster, an interest in writing. And I think growing up in a family of educators, sort of literary adjacent. My parents had friends who were writers and poets. And growing up in New Orleans, which is a very culturally rich, creative community, I went to school with Jason Marsalis, for example, and I, spent the night over at his house, and so just kind of being aware of creativity in the arts, I think, created the foundation for me.
Okay.
Yeah, and then got into high school and didn't really consider myself to be very good at anything, but was told I was a good writer.
Okay.
Shout out Gene Gill, Ben Franklin High School.
Nice.
Retired. But once you hear you're good at something, at least if you're me, it makes you want to be even better at it, or it makes you want to do it.
Correct.
So from that point on, I kind of considered myself a writer. And I went to college and, I majored in English and math. And after a little while, math got too hard for me. So then I was just an English major.
That's an interesting combination. Most people who are into writing and words,
Yeah.
they cannot add 2 plus 2. I'm one of those.
Yeah.
So that's that you did both.
No,
Okay.
yeah. Well, my dad was an artist and like a painter and a drawer and also a math teacher. So
Okay.
I guess it runs in the family.
Okay.
Went to college in Mississippi and was an English major and really got into creative writing and wrote for the school newspaper. And then after school, landed a job as a newspaper reporter in Mississippi, in Jackson, Mississippi, at a small weekly, and did that for a few years, and then missed New Orleans and wanted to come home. Came home, couldn't get on with the Times-Picayune. I got a job working at a newspaper on the North Shore in Covington. and I did that for a while, and kind of got sick of being a newspaper reporter. But considering that I felt like writing was really my only skill, what was I going to do? I didn't know much about advertising other than, a lot of movies being set in ad agencies.
Correct.
But I kind of got lucky. Somebody I went to college with worked at a small agency called Keating McGee in New Orleans, and she got me an interview. And the creative director gave me an assignment and wanted me to come up with some ads. I picked the product, just draw them up, didn't have to be pretty or anything. I was applying for a job as a junior copywriter.
Okay.
And he saw enough in them, I guess, to give me a chance. Or he took a chance on me, I guess. And it wasn't a big risk for him because I wasn't making hardly any money. But
he took the risk, Jason.
He
He still took the risk.
He
Okay.
took the risk. And so I started there, and that was 2000, I think, 2001 maybe.
Can I interrupt to say something about that? Because I talk to my students a lot about, when you work in creative fields like advertising, you are going to be asked to show how you think creatively. So when you talk about someone taking a risk on you, he had to, right? You kind of really don't know if someone's really going to fully lean into and unleash their creativity until you give them a little bit of a chance.
Yeah.
It's kind of yours to mess up, but I understand that.
Totally.
Yeah.
I think he was just looking for a little bit of an understanding of what goes into an ad, a creative idea. And I think my product I chose was Franzia box wine. You know what that is? Of course, everybody does.
I do.
And I just made an ad for it, and it ended up being something about how, beauty is on the inside. I can't remember exactly what it was. But,
Okay.
it was about don't pay for the bottle, you're paying for the wine. And I guess he saw enough in there to give me a shot. So, and I kind of hit the ground running. My first big, not my first, but one of the big things I did there was the owner of the Charlotte Hornets basketball team wanted to move the team to New Orleans. It's a controversial thing to move a professional sports franchise. And in order for it to be approved by the NBA, they had to show that there was a market here. He had to sell 10,000 season tickets. And so the Charlotte Hornets, which was him, George Shen, the owner, and his partner Ray Wooldridge, hired my agency, Keating McGee, to create a campaign to sell 10,000 season tickets in New Orleans, which is very exciting. I'm a sports fan. There was a big carrot dangling, which is like we could get an NBA team in New Orleans, and man, it was.
Don't mess this up.
Don't mess it up, but also don't sleep. It was like 3 or 4 months of just going and going and going, culminating in a presentation that we created that was delivered to a room full of NBA owners and local politicos. Mark Morial was in there. It was right when he was transitioning the mayor. It was after Ray Nagin had won. So Ray Nagin was in the room. John Breaux, who was like the senator at the time, was in the room. So it was like, I felt like, like Hamilton in the room where it happens. I felt like that was the room where it happened. I was in that room. I was a fly on the wall, but I was in the room. It felt pretty cool, Yeah,
yeah.
So, and we were successful. So I think maybe I was hooked. And now we have the New Orleans Pelicans.
Nice.
And it was because of me.
What?
Not really.
No. You were a big part of that.
It was
developing
actually,
the campaign.
and not only that, but the account coordinator on that project, who I worked, arm in arm with, is now my wife.
What?
So yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of marriages in the advertising industry.
I know,
where I used to
there
work,
are.
a lot, because you're working
We're in the
together, all that
trenches,
creative spirit and
Yes.
energy.
Yeah, long hours, lots of drinks.
Well, and
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, I want to go back to that for a second. When you said for 3 to 4 hours you had no sleep.
3 to 4 months.
3 to 4 months. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
3 to 4 months when you said that. Can you just give us a little bit of insight into what you were doing in those 3 to 4 months?
Well, I mean, in that particular campaign, there was so many tactics. There were everything from print ads to creating web environments where people could go in and reserve their tickets, brochures. Let's see. We drove to Baton Rouge to do radio remotes where I would would be interviewed on the radio about why this is an important thing. Just the creation of all the things, you know, there's just, in any campaign, and especially in a campaign like that, there's just so many things that have to be made.
How do you ensure creating effective ads versus just entertaining ones?
Yeah. Man, such an important question, because, you know, the whole Super Bowl is filled with ads that are very entertaining, but are they effective? I mean, I guess it's debatable. I think it's two things. I think the two parts of the equation for effective, and they should be entertaining too. But for them to be effective, you have to dive into your product, your service, your brand, whatever it is that you're advertising, and you need to like fully understand it and fully understand the truth of it. Because the worst thing you can do is make an ad for something and convert the person, the audience, and then they buy the thing and it doesn't
Deliver.
live up. It doesn't live up to what you
Period.
promised. Yeah.
Yep.
And so that's true if you're selling like a sports drink or if you're selling a health experience, you know?
That's powerful.
Yeah.
The truth of it.
The truth of it, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think, like, you know, people say that advertisers are like shysters or whatever the word is, but you know, the truth is that's not true. I think people that create advertising want to deliver, you know, convey an authentic, you know, representation of what it is they're selling, because if not, they're dumb. You know?
Correct.
You might sell one product. You know, you're not going to have any repeat customers.
Correct.
If you're lying.
Yep.
So that's one half of it, and the other half is to equally understand, you know, your target, your consumer, you know, and empathy. Put yourself in their shoes. What do they want? What do they fear? What are their aspirations? All those things. Because if you have both those sides, then you can put them together to create something that's effective, but it also needs to be entertaining.
Yep.
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I appreciate that. Really, that was really powerful. And I teach this all the time in my intro to advertising class, the importance of understanding the audience. And I've taught them around making sure that you deliver against your promise, but I've never heard it said so eloquently and accurately around understanding the truth of it. Because if you spend some time really understanding what you're actually selling, right, then from there, you don't really have to manipulate people. You can just tell them the truth and find creative ways to tell them the truth.
Yeah.
But spend the time in understanding your product, your service. So thank you for that. So, couple of additional questions. We could talk forever. I'd like for you to tell us, before we go into your campaigns you're really proud of, what's the greatest joy of being a CD, and what are the greatest challenges with being a creative director?
Okay, I think they're kind of related. I think so. When you're first in the business, right? Say you're a copywriter or you're an art director. When you have a project, you protect that project. Like it's and I think part of it is like maybe immaturity, but it's like, I have an idea, I have a concept, I have a TV ad or whatever it is, and it's perfect. And if anybody suggests a change to it, they are destroying it. You know, that's how you feel.
Right. It's art. It is art. It's art for commerce. Yeah.
And as the creator of it, it's like, it's understandable because, you know, you've put a lot of thought into it and all the little details make sense to you. And if somebody changes something, well, there's a domino effect and it's going to change everything else.
And it's so personal. I want to keep
it's often very personal.
You created this.
Yes.
It's you. So when someone says they have an idea change for your idea, it's like a personal attack almost.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the greatest challenge of becoming a creative director is learning that other people get to, you know, you're not creating the thing by yourself.
You're directing it.
You're directing it, and other people are creating it, and you have a voice, but really you're a facilitator. You're there to kind of make sure it gets it's as good as it can be. But there's a realization that comes at some point, and the realization is there's not only one path to good, you know. There's not only one way to make a good ad. Like, usually if somebody's a professional, they're going to have some good contribution to make. And so that's the challenge. of like sort of that letting go and welcoming. But it's a pretty easy challenge because it doesn't take long for you to see that, oh, wow, these other contributors are actually making good contributions and they're making it better. And once you let go and see that, then it's like, it's an easy thing to get accustomed to. And then that leads you to the greatest joy, which is being able to be the facilitator of a team of people that are all kind of doing their best thing. And you get to see them experience the joy that you experienced when you were kind of a young copywriter and you got to see your TV ad on TV for the first time or whatever.
Can you share with us one or two of your most prized and exciting campaigns you've developed? Tell us about them and your role in developing them.
So the most recent brand campaign that we created for LCMC Health, which was my first brand campaign that I created for LCMC Health, and it's called Keeping You Well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I've seen that.
You've
Very
seen
cool.
it. Okay, good. And we're actually in the process of creating Keeping You Well 2.0 right now, which is going to, I think, fill some of the holes that we didn't know existed in Keeping You Well 1.0.
You never know until you execute.
Yeah, you never know until, and that was a different time. And I'll make that make sense in a second. But so Keeping You Well was created, in the sort of waning days of COVID.
Okay.
Of the lockdowns and it was, COVID seems like 10 years ago now, but it wasn't. It was like
a year ago.
Yeah, a year ago.
Yeah.
And so well, first let me start by saying, what do we know about LCMC Health? Well, we know that these hospitals and clinics and providers that make up the LCMC Health system, which is now 9 hospitals, at the time it was 6, but it's hospitals that people know and love: Touro, Children's Hospital New Orleans, East Jeff, West Jeff, UMC, New Orleans East Hospital. These are hospitals, like some of them are newer, but these are hospitals that people, for the most part, generations of New Orleanians and people from greater New Orleans have been going to and relying on for everything from childbirth to, senior care, right? So people have opinions on these hospitals, and they're accurate. Whatever their opinions are, it's based on real world experiences. And what we know about their opinions is that they, compared to our competitors, they feel like they get a little bit of that kind of New Orleans friendly, welcoming vibe from our people, from our team members.
Okay.
I think that LCMC Health can lay claim to being the New Orleans health system, born in New Orleans, really, fundamental to our DNA is Children's Hospital and Touro, which are, bedrock New Orleans institutions.
Okay.
Touro, by the way, has been around since like the 1800s or something. It's crazy. I don't know. Like, well, obviously not in its current state, but
Right.
Touro Infirmary was like pre-Civil War. Yeah. I didn't know that until I started working here, but
Yeah.
but so we want New Orleans to always be present in anything that we do, in any marketing expression. And so that was an important thing, because it's true, because people see us that way. And people, and I think it kind of goes a little bit deeper to what do people love about New Orleans? People love coming to New Orleans for lots of reasons: restaurants, live music, everything. But really, fundamentally, people love New Orleans people. People love coming to New Orleans and being around New Orleans people. New Orleans people are very welcoming and inclusive, and they make you feel like you belong here. They make you feel like they're sharing the city with you,
Yes.
And I think people get a little bit of that welcoming vibe from the people that they interact with through LCMC Health. That's what the research showed.
Okay.
So that was an important part of it. Like, New Orleans needs to be a big part of our brand. And at the same time, much of what New Orleans people that live around here, much of what they love about their city had been taken from them, right? For a couple of years because of COVID. So what do people love about living here? They love going out to restaurants. They love going to festivals. They love being in public communal
With each other.
experiences.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mardi Gras parades.
Yeah.
And that had been taken away from them. And a lot of those things that people love to do about living in New Orleans and just about life in general require you to be healthy and to be well. You can't
Right.
march with the 610 stompers if you can't walk,
Correct.
or if you're
Yeah.
bedridden or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So we wanted this campaign to be a reminder or a celebration of living in New Orleans, but also a celebration of living in New Orleans and being able to take full advantage of it. Being able to take full advantage of all the days that you have left, whether it's because you want to ride in muses,
Right.
or if it's because you want to be able to just ride your bike around the neighborhood,
Right.
or if you want to be able to walk your daughter down the aisle when it's that time.
Right.
So all of these things that are life's small pleasures and big pleasures require a commitment to health, and that's what this brand campaign, Keeping You Well, was all about.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
So, as parting words, do you have any advice you would offer to a future creative director, especially this whole new crop of creative directors that, they're doing a lot of social media content, but just in general, advice you have to offer creative directors? And my final question for you is how do you remain inspired as a creative director? Because what I know is, and I talk to my students about this, is you got to find your own processes to create.
Yeah.
And when you have a job as a creative director, you are on the hook to create.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you remain inspired? So however you want to answer those around advice, and then how you remain inspired.
Right. Yeah, as far as advice on becoming a creative director, which if somebody wants to call themselves a creative director, by all means, call yourself a creative director. I mean, I remember when I was in high school, one of my friends started up a business where he sold beepers. Remember beepers?
Mm-hmm, I do.
And he got business cards made, and he was CEO.
That's it.
Yeah, it was a one-man shop, and he was CEO. So
correct. That's a good point.
Yeah, call yourself whatever you want.
Absolutely.
But if you want to sort of walk the more standard path to creative director, I think that it's important to consume art in its many different forms, literature, film, music, visual art. I think that it's important to have an opinion. You don't always have to voice your opinion, but just, be an evaluator of things. Know what you like about something and what you don't like about it. Not just an ad, but anything, TV show or whatever. And then, protect your creations, but also be ready to accept input and feedback and ideas from others, because this is a collaborative business, collaborative industry.
Very well. Thank you.
Yeah.
And how do you remain inspired? How many years have you been in this industry?
Yeah, let's see. I think it was right around 2001, so over 20 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you do to remain inspired as a creative director?
First of all, don't rely on inspiration, because it doesn't come every day, but work does come every day.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes you just gotta get words on the paper, whether you're inspired or not. However, it is important to have techniques if you need an idea. I'll give you my technique. I'm a runner. I run in Audubon Park. And if I have a campaign that I need to create, usually if I'm thinking about it while I'm running, by the end of my run, I'll have the idea.
Got it.
Yeah, and I think that there's been some research on the technique of taking your mind off something in order to have an idea about that something.
Yes.
Yeah. And so whether it's a run or taking a walk, sometimes I would back in my agency days I would just take off because I was near the quarter, and the quarter is a very nice place to take a walk. And I would just go on a walk, you know. And when you're walking through a city, like, you're focusing on, you're not thinking too much about what, you know, your creative problem is in your head. You're thinking about your path and not getting hit by a car or whatever.
Right.
But it's going on back there, and at some point there'll be a little flash, and you'll have your idea. And at some point in your career, you'll know when you have the idea, oh, my problem is solved.
Yes.
You know, okay, it's not the fully fleshed out campaign, but you have the little insight that you need, and you know that you'll be able to create the full campaign.
Thank you so much, Jason. And thank you for giving words to what I talked to the students about. I just talked to them just yesterday, actually, about figuring out a process, but you called it a technique. And I mentioned to them when I'm on the elliptical trainer or when I'm cycling, it's amazing the ideas. It's like these ideas just kind of come. So I didn't know that's called a technique. So thank you.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think they call it like shower wisdom or something, like, because sometimes people have thought ideas when they're showering or whatever. I think it's the same idea. It's just like, do some kind of menial task to take, maybe like cleaning or sweeping or whatever. Some little menial task to take your mind off the problem, because if you're thinking about it too much, that might be paralyzing.
Nice. Yeah. Just like, yeah. Thank you so much, Jason.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. So you now know what a creative director does. You understand the path to it. Understanding that your path can be different, right? As Jason just said, if you feel that you're a creative director, then you are. But definitely take heed to some of the advice that he offered around what you do every day, how you can remain inspired. And we wish you the very best with your creative director careers. We'll see you soon in the next edition of Behind the Ad.